Every clock that tries to live in my house dies at the same minute. 1717, the first time I saw that number. It was on a wall clock in a stone kitchen in 1940, in a French village where nobody should have been standing, and every clock had already stopped when we arrived. My name is Jean Martin. I was a caporal in the 3E Company, 18E Regiment, D. In May of that year they kept sending me ahead into villages, a few streets in front of the column, close enough to see who was still breathing and which clocks were still ticking. Most men remember gunfire. I remember hands on dials. Now I stand in my own small kitchen in Lyon, 70, 80 years later, watching the digital numbers on the microwave blink. Las 4:59 de la tarde. And las 5 de la tarde. 1701. My hand rests on the counter. The kettle hums. Somewhere in the building, a door slams. Traffic on the boulevard murmurs through the closed window. It is an ordinary late afternoon. The digits jump. 1717. The microwave beeps once, a flat, apologetic sound. Then its fan dies in the middle of the cycle. The humming in the wall stops, as if someone has pinched a wire between two fingers. In the sudden quiet, I hear something else under the plaster and pipes. A faint ticking. Not one clock. Several, all slightly out of sync, like teeth chattering. Above the sink hangs the cheap round clock my daughter bought at the supermarket. It is crooked on its nail. 2 years ago, it stopped at 1717, the second hand frozen between marks. I took it down, changed the battery, tapped the plastic. It ticked again, did a full brave circle, and settled. The next morning it was back at 1717. I told myself it was bad batteries, bad plastic age. That is what you do when the minute on your kitchen wall matches the minute you walked into a village church in 1940 and found every clock inside altar, sacristy, rectory dead, on the same mark. You blame the batteries. I turn my head towards the living room. The mantel clock my wife's father left us is silent, its pendulum frozen in mid-swing. The little travel watch on the bookshelf, the one that lay against my chest all through the retreat, lies face up. Its hands exactly where they were the day I picked it up from a stone floor spattered dark and drying. 1717. Downstairs, a woman laughs, a sharp, bright sound that cuts off halfway, as if someone has pressed stop on a tape. The building seems to hold its breath. Even the kettle hesitates, its steam thinning. For a moment, the smell in the air shifts. Not limescale and tea. Coal, smoke, wet wool. The sour metal tang of blood on stone floors that have already been washed once and will never quite come clean. Somewhere in the walls all the little ticks fall into the same beat. 1 second, 1 minute, the same one. I reach for the travel watch. My fingers hesitate just above it. The glass is scratched in a spiderweb pattern from where it hit a cobblestone, but the crack doesn't touch the hands. I feel the familiar weight of it in my palm. Cool and a little sticky with age. My thumb rubs the dent on the back where Marcel's ring struck it when he shoved me through a doorway. The tiny stem is stiff but still turns. The mechanism never worked again after that day. It doesn't need to. The hands only know one place. From the hallway outside my door, I hear a sound I recognize before my mind wants to. All at once, in thin plaster-filtered chorus, every apartment in this building gives up its ticking. The little wall clocks and bedside alarms and oven timers fall into the same silence. And then, beneath that silence, I hear them land together on the same second. The same as in 1940. That is when I know the story is not finished. That the village followed me home. That the moment I walked out of there, it walked with me. The whistle of the kettles in 1940 was different. Coal-fired, bigger. The steam wetter in the air. We were somewhere south of Sedan then, but the map changed every day. The line bent, broke, tried to knit itself together again. Names blurred. Charleville, Rethel, Vaugers. Our lieutenant pushed pins into the paper that never stayed where he left them. The Germans were always already past that point when new orders came down. Back then, the time that mattered was not what the clock said. It was the time it took to move a gun, to boil coffee, to smoke one cigarette between mortar shells. Still, every man in the section had a watch or a way to mark the day. It made you feel anchored. The sun lied on cloudy days. Wristwatches were less fickle. I was 22, a caporal with a dirty great MAS 36 that always felt a little too big for my shoulders. 3rd Company, 18E, Regiment D. We had been on the move for days, falling back, turning to face nothing, then falling back again. The lorries coughed along narrow roads, lined with poplars and terrified families. Old women in black-hauled carts piled with mattresses. Children clung to chickens. Cows wandered loose in the ditches. In the back of our truck, men tried to sleep sitting up, helmets tipped over their eyes. Empty ration tins rattled on the floor. The canvas above our heads slapped and sighed. Beside me, Marcel Dubois rolled a cigarette one-handed, the paper neat between his fingers, despite the shaking of the vehicle. Marcel was from Marcella, and never let anyone forget it. He hummed bits of music, hall songs under his breath, never quite loud enough for the sergeant to tell him to shut up. He claimed his uncle had played the accordion in every bar worth drinking in from the Old Port to the Rue de Rome. His watch was a cheap thing with a cracked crystal and a leather strap that smelled like sweat and cigarette smoke. He tapped it with his finger now. "If this truck hits one more pothole," he muttered, "it'll start going backwards. Then maybe we'll find the Boches marching the other way for once." I smiled without showing teeth. My jaw hurt from clenching. Across from us, Lefebvre bounced with the motion of the truck, big hands folded over his knees. He came from a farm near Amiens, shoulders like an ox, but he moved quietly, careful with his strength. He carried a proper watch, a silver thing his father had given him. Every night he took it out of his breast pocket, wiped the case with a corner of his handkerchief, and checked it against the sergeant's. "You worry too much about time," Sergeant Morel had told him once. "In this war, the only time that matters is now, and you don't need a watch for that." Morel sat near the tailgate, boots planted wide, one hand on the wooden slat. His mustache bristled with dust. He had done his conscription in the last war, and pretended it had been a long, dull posting in the rear. Now and then, a name would slip into his speech that didn't belong to anyone in our company. Verdun never left his eyes, even when he laughed. On that morning, he wasn't laughing. None of us were. The sound of Stuka sirens had started the day before, far off at first, then closer. We had seen the black crosses on wings whip overhead, bombs falling on crossroads and bridges our officers promised us we weren't going to use anyway. The sky felt owned by someone else. The truck lurched to a halt, brakes, squealing. Voices outside, a shouted order, a whistle. The canvas flap lifted, and Lieutenant Duval stuck his head in. His helmet sat too low on his forehead, as if he were a boy wearing his father's gear. The dirt on his cheek looked out of place, like smudged ink. "Troy Seams section, down," he said. "We're walking from here." We climbed out into light that felt too bright after the canvas gloom. The road ahead was choked with vehicles nose to tail, some broken down, some simply halted by confusion. A horse lay in the ditch, legs stiff, a dark pool spreading under its belly. A woman stood beside it, hand on its neck, lips moving soundlessly. "Orders?" Morel asked. "Regimental thinks the Germans have found a gap farther east," Duval said, voice tight. "We are to probe ahead on foot, clear a village for possible fallback. Small place off the main road. Name of Saint Quelquechos. Locals say it was evacuated." "Evacuated," Marcel repeated. "Half the country is evacuated." Duval ignored him. He unfolded a smaller map, edges gone soft from handling, and jabbed a finger at a cluster of lines. "Here. Crossroads. Church. Maybe a school. We go in, check for enemy, civilians, anything useful. We report back. Then the brass will decide whether to make a stand there or keep running." Morel grunted. "How far?" 3 kilometers through the fields. Less traffic that way." Duval's eyes flicked to the sky, where a pair of specks moved slowly against thin clouds, and less visible from above, perhaps. We spread out along the hedge line, rifles slung, packs biting into our shoulders. The road fell away behind us, with its shouts and grinding gears. Ahead lay low, rolling ground, hedges, a few scattered trees. Wheat fields brushed our trousers. The Germans were somewhere out there, but the world at ground level held no tanks, no barbed wire yet, only skylarks and the clack of our equipment. An old man watched us from the edge of his yard as we passed. His face was cut deeply around the mouth, like someone who had spent a lifetime tightening his lips against words. A woman stood behind him, hands on the shoulders of a little girl whose hair was neatly braided. No baggage, no cart. The house behind them was shuttered. "Go home," the old man called. His accent thickened the vowels. "Go back to your trucks. There is nothing for you that way." Duval stopped. "Nothing for us." The old man shifted his gaze from the lieutenant to our line, counting under his breath. "You're too many," he said. "Too late." Morel stepped forward, hand raised in something between reassurance and impatience. "We have our orders, monsieur," he said. "Is there a German presence in the village ahead?" The old man's eyes moved to me for a moment. I don't know why. Maybe I stood closer to him in age than the lieutenant did. Maybe he simply picked one face to address. "They left it alone last time," he said. "They will leave it again. It has given them enough." "Last time?" Marcel asked. "You mean in 14? The old man's lips thinned. "The clocks," he said. "They took the village when the clocks stopped. Every one. My brother was there. He came back with white hair." Behind him, the woman tightened her hold on the girl. The child's eyes were wide, following the line of our rifles. "What clocks?" Lefebvre asked quietly. "All of them." The old man lifted his hand and tapped his own wrist, though he wore no watch. When the hands came together on the same second, the Boches lined them up in the square. They shot the men first, then the women, then the children. My brother said the big clock on the church had jammed, and the little ones in the houses followed. The priest said it was a sign. The Boches said it was nothing. My brother went back one night after the war to see. The hands were still there. The same place. They never moved again. "Stories," Morel said, but not loudly. The old man shook his head once, slowly. "You will hear them," he said. "When your watches stop, do not stay. Do not look around you. Close your eyes and walk. Walk until you smell something alive." Merci, Duval said stiffly. "We will be careful." We moved on. Behind us, the woman pulled the child back toward the open doorway. The old man remained at the fence, watching until the hedge swallowed him. "He's crazy," Marcel said after a while, more for his own nerves than ours. "Villages don't make clocks stop. Germans do, when they blow them up." "Quiet," Morel said. We walked. Fields, a narrow stream with muddy banks marked by boot prints, a stand of poplars whispering overhead. Twice we dropped to a crouch as aircraft passed low, the vibrations skimming our helmets, but they were French wings marked with roundels. We waved like idiots. They either didn't see us or had more important things to look at. The village appeared in pieces. First, the slate roof of the church tower over the ridgeline, then the red tiles of houses, the gray strip of a street. Smoke did not rise from any of the chimneys. No dogs barked. No carts moved. From this distance, it might have been a photograph rather than a place. "Looks empty," Marcel said. "Looks quiet," Lefebvre corrected. He had his watch out, thumb resting on the case. 10:42. "Check," Morel said, lifting his own. 10:42. We stopped at the edge of the last field, a low stone wall marking the boundary. Duval crouched, map spread over his knees, and traced the street layout with his finger. "We'll go in 2 files, he said. "Martin, you're with me, left side. Morel, take Dubois, Lefebvre, and the others on the right. Clear as you go, ground floors only. If you find anything Germans, civilians, useful supplies, you shout. No wandering off, no heroics. We are not here to fight the war alone, just to see if anyone is home." He folded the map and slipped it back into his case. His hand trembled slightly on the snap. He wiped his palm on his trouser leg and drew his pistol. Move. We crossed the wall and stepped into the village of St. The name was on the sign, but I can't say it. I never said it again after that day. In my memory, it has no name, only the sound of metal on metal, the soft ticking that grows louder as you listen. The first thing I saw was a clock. It hung in the window of the small shop on the corner, behind dusty glass. A plain thing, wooden frame, cream face. The hands pointed at 17 minutes past 5. The second hand lay between numbers, tilted slightly, as if considering whether to move and deciding against it. A fine white crack ran across the glass. Weird time for a shop to shut, Marcel muttered. Shut for months, by the look of it, Morel said. Eyes up. We moved along the street, boots sounding too loud on the cobbles. The air felt thick, as if the sun had melted and pooled low, making everything heavy. Somewhere a fly buzzed against glass. Halfway down the street, a doorway opened onto a corridor, smelling of stale bread and soap. Inside, hanging on a wall above a coat rack, another clock. Different shape, darker wood. Same time, 1717. The second hand had fallen off completely and lay at the bottom of the case, a thin sliver of metal. I felt my shoulders tighten. Do you see this? I asked. Marcel glanced in, frowned. Coincidence. Lefebvre stepped in behind me, his bulk filling the doorway. He pulled his watch from his pocket, flipped it open with his thumb. Still, 10:48, he said. Relax. We checked the ground floor quickly. Table with plates still on it. A loaf gone hard, knife stuck in its side. A child's wooden toy on the kitchen floor with one wheel missing. No bodies, no blood. Just abandonment, as if everyone had risen from their chairs at the same instant and walked out. Back to the street, Morel called. We'll clear the other side. House after house. A room with linen still hung on a line across it, stiff as paper. A bedroom with a crucifix above the bed and a dress laid out on the blanket. Always a clock. Mantelpieces, walls, a small one on a bedside table with a cracked face. All of them different. All of them stopped. 1717. By the time we reached the square, I could feel the weight of the number between my shoulder blades. The church stood on the far side, its tower blunt against the sky. The door was shut. The big clock on the tower face was in full view now. Its hands pointed, of course, at 1717. The square itself held no people. A few carts. A bicycle leaned against a lamppost. Tire sagged. A dog's dish with a ring of dry residue. In front of the church, the paving stones were discolored in a wide rectangle, as if benches or some kind of wooden platform had stood there for a very long time and then gone, leaving the stone under them a different shade. Jesus, Marcel whispered. Quiet, Morel said again, but softer. Lefebvre's fingers tightened around his watch. He checked it once more, mouth moving as if counting. Then he frowned deeper, shoulders lifting. What? I asked. It stopped, he said. 10:53. It stopped. He turned the crown, shook the case. The hands stayed where they were. Give it here. Morel held out his hand. Lefebvre passed it over. The sergeant squinted at the face. His mustache twitched. Maybe the spring broke, he said. He checked his own. It stopped too, he said after a moment. 10:53. Marcel tapped his wristwatch with a finger, then harder. Nan, he said under his breath. Let me guess, I said. 10:53. He swallowed, nodded. Duval stepped into the center of the square, pistol still in hand, eyes scanning windows. We sweep the rest, he said. The village is empty, that much is clear. We note it, we report it. The clocks are a curiosity, nothing more. Just then, the church bell rang. Not the hollow, distant toll of some tower far off. This was right above us, a single deep note that rolled down the stone walls and settled in the pit of my stomach. It felt wrong. It felt like someone had struck the bell underwater, the sound thick and slow. We all flinched. Rifles came up without orders. Fingers tightened on triggers. The echo sloshed around the square and died into a ringing silence that made my teeth ache. No one pulled the rope, Marcel said. His voice was too loud. No one is up there. Wind, Duval said, though there was none. The air lay on us like a damp blanket. Sweat crawled under my collar. I looked up at the tower clock. The hands had not moved. 17:17. The bell rope that should have hung behind the church door was not visible through the crack. The wooden doors bulged slightly, as if pressure from inside pushed them outwards. Morel licked his lips. "Martin," he said, "with me. We'll check the church. Dubois, you and Lefebvre take the houses along the left side. The rest spread out. No one alone." We moved toward the church door. My boots slid slightly on grit. A fly buzzed near my ear, and I swatted it away. The wood of the doors was scarred, the iron fittings dull with age. Someone had carved a cross into the left panel long ago, the grooves worn smooth by fingers. The handle felt cold in my hand, colder than the air. I pushed. The door opened inward with a long, reluctant creak. Inside, the light came in thin and greenish through high windows. Dust hung in shafts. The pews stood in neat rows, hymn books left on them as if people had just stepped out to fetch more candles. The smell hit me all at once. Old incense, wax, damp stone, and something else. The ghost of cordite. At the far end, the altar cloth hung straight. Above it, the crucifix. Christ looked down, head tipped, wood darkened. Along the right wall, under the women's gallery, a line of framed photographs showed faces in black and white. A plaque beneath them read names that I did not read then and never went back to. In the side aisle, just below the tower, the rope for the bell hung motionless. It was tied up neatly in a coil, looped over a hook to keep it off the floor. "See?" Morel whispered. His voice seemed smaller in the big space. "The bell is old. Wood shifts. Metal cools. Things move." He did not sound like he believed it. Then I heard it. A faint sound just at the edge of hearing, like 100 small mechanisms straining in unison. A soft, collective tick that never quite became a tick. It seemed to come from everywhere at once. Ceiling, floor. I turned my head slowly. On the back wall of the church, above the entrance, hung a wooden balcony where the organ stood. On the pillar nearest the organ loft, someone had mounted a small brass clock. Its face was turned slightly toward the nave, as if it were watching the congregation. 17:17. "Sergeant," I said. "I see it," he replied. Behind us, in the doorway, Marcel shouted. We spun around. He stood there, framed in the light, rifle in one hand, the other clamped over his watch. His face had lost color under the dust. "They all did it," he said. "In every house. Every one we checked. Mine, Lefebvre's, even Borden's old thing that never kept proper time. They all stopped at 10:53 for us. For them, it was..." He jabbed a finger toward the brass clock. 17:17. Something shifted in the air. I felt it more than heard it. A pressure change, like when a train is about to enter a tunnel. The hairs on my arms rose. Then, faintly at first, we heard voices. German shouted, the syllables sharp and clipped. They did not come from the street. They did not echo properly in the church. They came from somewhere sideways, like sound seeping through a wall that wasn't there. Aufstellen schnell. Schnell. The words slid along the nave, bounced off stone, crawled under my skin. My rifle felt heavier in my hands. "We should leave," I said. "Now?" In a moment, Duval answered from outside. "Finish the sweep." The voices overlapped, a chorus of orders and cries, none of them attached to bodies we could see. I stepped back into the square, blinking in the sudden light. The clocks watched us in every window, on every mantle, on the tower. The hands pointed to the same place, the same second, the same moment. 17:17. My own sense of time slipped, as if my body couldn't quite decide whether it was morning, noon, or late afternoon. Lieutenant Morel said, "The men's watches. We note it," Duval said abruptly, his jaw clenched. "We're soldiers, not old women. Finish your task." The second time the bell rang, it rang 3 times in quick succession. The sound hit us like a shockwave. Somewhere in the warren of side streets, a dog howled once and was cut off mid-note. The sky dimmed, clouds thickened from nowhere, swallowing the thin spring sun. The shadow of the tower grew longer and darker, crawling across the square like spilled ink. "Martin," Morel said under his breath. "Count." I did. 1, 2, 3, 4. The counting stretched. My tongue felt too big in my mouth. The seconds did not fall where they should. Somewhere between 30 and 40, they collapsed altogether. My vision blurred around the edges. Then, all at once, it was late afternoon. The light had shifted without moving. Shadows lay at different angles. The air felt cooler. The smell changed, taking on smoke, sweat, fear. The square we stood in was the same square, but filled with ghosts. Not translucent, not floating. Men, women, children, they were there and not there, like reflections in a window when you look beyond the glass. They stood in lines, hands bound, faces turned toward the church. German soldiers flanked them, rifles level. Their uniforms were not like the ones we had seen in this war, not quite. Older cut, different helmets. Some wore faded pickelhaubes, spikes gleaming dully. Our boots stood in their footprints. One of the village women, her hair pulled back tight, apron stained, flickered between being there and not. I could see the cobbles through her skirt. Her head turned slowly, as if searching for someone in the small crowd of her neighbors. For a moment, her eyes lined up with mine. She saw me. Her mouth moved. No sound came out. Her lips formed a shape I did not know, a dialect I had never heard in life. But I understood one thing. She spoke to me, not to the men lining her up, not to the priest nearby whose face was a smear of gray. Behind the ghost army, German officers raised their hands. Somewhere, a watch clicked loud enough to be heard. 1717. The rifles fired. The sound came in 2 layers. One was the flat crack of old gunpowder, slightly duller than what we knew. The other was the memory of that sound hanging in the stone. Together, they hit my chest like a hammer. The air sprayed with invisible fragments. I smelled hot metal and blood that was not there. The bodies jerked, fell, passed through our legs and rifles and boots. Marcel dropped to his knees, both hands over his ears, cigarette crushed between his fingers. "Murd," he whispered. "Murd, murd." "It's an echo," Duval said, though his voice shook. "A residual. I don't know. We are seeing something that happened before. That is all." The ghosts lay still. Then, slowly, they faded, bleeding into the stone and air, leaving only the discolored rectangle in front of the church, and the impression of weight where nothing lay. The clocks did not move. We were still in the same second. Lieutenant Morel said, "You heard the farmer. This place is wrong. Our watches stopped at 10:53. Theirs stopped at 1717. That's the same moment for them, for us. There are 2 times here, and neither belongs to us." Duval swallowed. Sweat ran down his temple. The regiment can find another village," Morel snapped. "We have seen enough. We go back. We tell them empty but unusual. They can send artillery if they like, blow it off the map. It won't matter to who owns it." A shout came from the far end of the street. "Sergeant, over here." It was Borden, a thin man with a cough that never left him. He stood at the mouth of a side alley, waving us over. His face looked wrong, stretched. We hurried. The alley smelled of sour milk and something older. At the far end, it opened into a smaller square, enclosed on 3 sides by houses. The 4th side was blocked by what had once been a low wall and was now rubble. In the middle of the space lay a body. For a second I thought it was one of the ghosts returning. Then I saw the uniform. Horizon blue, like ours, but older cut. Puttees wound tight around the calves. The helmet was the early Adrian model, with the flaming bomb badge worn smooth. The coat was wrong for 1940, wrong for the season. It lay neat on the bones, as if it had never been disturbed. The man's hands were still tied behind his back with a frayed rope. Borden stood back, hand over his mouth. He's been here years, he said. Decades. Look at him. But there's no dust. He was right. The bones were white, the cloth faded, but there was no layer of dirt, no leaves, no signs of scavengers, as if he had been placed there yesterday, as if time had skipped him. On the stone beside the skeleton, someone had placed a pocket watch. The glass was intact. The case shone, as if polished recently. The hands pointed to 1717. I bent, reached out before I could stop myself. The metal stung my fingers like ice. I jerked back, heart thudding. Don't touch it, Morel said. Duval looked around the little square, eyes moving from window to window. The shutters were closed, but I felt the sense of being observed. Not by people, by mechanisms. Behind every wall, a clock. We are leaving, he said. Now, back the way we came. No more exploration, no more curiosities. Martin, take the lead. Dubois, you're on his left. Lefebvre right. Move. We turned. The alley did not lead back to the main square. The houses were the same. The sky was above us. The cobbles underfoot were solid. But where there should have been a straight run to the square, there was another turn, another corner we had not seen. We walked it, rifles tight in our hands. It brought us out into a different street entirely, lined with houses whose windows I did not remember passing. We tried another direction, another. The map in my head twisted, lost its shape. The village was not big enough to get lost in, but we were. Every time we thought we had found the main road, the church square, the signpost, we instead found another smaller space, another line of houses, with stopped clocks in their windows. Nan, Marcel said, breath coming short. Nan, .com, Morel snapped. His own knuckles were white on his rifle. We keep to the sun. We know, east, west. The road is east. We walk east. He lifted his arm to point. The sun did not help. It hung fixed in the same unfair late afternoon place, neither rising nor setting, casting the same length of shadow as before. My body insisted time had passed. My stomach clenched with hunger. My throat was dry, but the light did not change. We moved anyway. We walked straight, turned only when a wall forced us to. We kept track. I thought of lefts and rights. We passed a butcher's with a rust-colored smear beneath the hooks, a school with tiny chairs stacked on tiny desks, a cafe with chairs still out on the terrace, cups upturned on saucers. Stop, Lefebvre said suddenly. His voice cracked. We stopped. He pointed at a table in the cafe. On it sat a coffee cup with lipstick on the rim. Next to it lay a cigarette burned almost to the filter. Smoke still rose from it in a thin line. I smell it, Marcel whispered. Fresh. We had smelt nothing fresh in this village. No cooking, no shit, no animals. The faint thread of smoke wound into my nostrils, familiar and wrong at the same time. Someone is here, Duval said. If there are civilians, we must. A voice spoke behind us. You're late, it said in French, the accent local, female, young. We turned as one, rifles half raised. She stood in the cafe doorway. A woman in her 20s, apron tied around her waist, hair pinned up. Her skin had that pallor of someone who spends long days indoors. Her eyes were dark, fixed on us, without surprise. You're 26 years late, she said. You should have come when it mattered. My mouth went dry. Who are you? I asked. She tilted her head. You are in my cafe, she said. Who are you? Her outline shimmered slightly, like heat haze. Through her shoulder, I could see the counter behind her. But when she stepped forward, her foot scuffed the threshold, moved dust. Madame, Morel said, his voice gentler than I had heard it, even with children. This village was evacuated. There has been war again. You should not be here. It is not safe. She laughed once, without humor. We were told that last time, she said. The priest said we should go. Some did. They took the wagon and the cow and left at dawn. The rest of us stayed. The clock in the tower broke at 17:17. It seemed like a joke then, a funny little omen. We did not see the Germans until they were already in the square. She reached up, wiped her hands on her apron. When she pulled them away, there was no flour, no stain. My brother was tied to the post over there, she said, pointing. I was here, watching. The clocks stopped together. We heard them stick. Even the ones without pendulums. You know that sound, soldier? When metal tries to move, and something holds it. I did. I heard it now, under her words. The air went thick. She continued, like honey. We moved in it, slowly. When the rifles fired, it took so long for the bullets to reach them. I saw every one. I had time to count. 17, 17, 17. It never finished. We are still here. Her eyes sharpened on mine. And now you bring your war to our second. We didn't know, I said. The words felt useless as soon as I spoke them. No one ever knows, she said. They just look at their watches and say, it is time. For them, never for us. Behind her, somewhere deeper in the cafe, a clock ticked once, loud. The sound drilled into my ear. Leave, she said, before you stay. How? Marcel blurted. We can't find the road, it keeps twisting. The streets don't follow the streets, she said sharply. Don't follow the clocks. They like you. They smell new time on you. Close your eyes. Walk. Think of where you want to be. Do not look until you smell the world again. This is madness, Duval said. She looked at him with pity that belonged to someone far older. You think time obeys your rank? She asked. It obeys nothing now. It broke when they broke us. The bell rang a third time. The sound hit my spine. My knees buckled. The woman's outline flickered, shredded like paper in wind, and then she was gone. The cigarette on the table was ash. The smoke had vanished. Enough, Morel said. We do what she said. You can't be serious, Duval protested. Morel stepped close to him, face inches away. With respect, mon lieutenant, he said quietly. Your map does not work here. Your compass does not work. Our watches do not work. What does it cost us to try this? If it fails, we are no worse off. If it works, we live. Decide, Duval swallowed. Do as she said, he said finally. Form a line, hands on shoulders, Martin in front. Close your eyes. I did. My lids came down. The darkness behind them was not total. Red pulses moved with my heartbeat. The air in my nose tasted of dust and smoke and stone. Think of the field, Morel said softly behind me. The hedge, the farmer, the smell of manure. Go. I lifted my boot. The temptation to peek was overwhelming. I forced my eyes tighter, stepped forward. My toes met stone, then dirt, then something softer, like grass. My hand brushed the wall, rough plaster, under my palm. Someone's fingers dug into my shoulder, another set resting on my pack. We walked, left, right, I could not tell. The world shifted around us. The ticking rose, a swarm of tiny hammers. My teeth vibrated. My watch, dead in my pocket, felt hot. For a moment, I thought I smelled my mother's kitchen, onions frying, soap. Then it was gone, replaced by wagon grease and horse sweat, then by cigarette smoke again. Don't stop, Morel said. Keep walking. Something brushed my sleeve. Cold, like silk dipped in water. A whisper slid past my ear, almost a word, then just breath. My foot struck a step, then another, then dropped down into softer ground. The air changed, lost some of its stone chill, and then, all at once, the smell of dung and cut grass and tobacco flooded my nose. Open, Morel said. I opened my eyes. We stood in the field just beyond the hedge where we had left the road. The village lay behind us, its roofs in the same place, its church tower the same shape. From here, it looked like any other cluster of houses. Smoke rose now from one chimney, a thin line. The old man at the fence had gone. The house stood open, curtains moving in a breeze I had not felt inside the village. I turned my head. The road was still full of vehicles, but the positions had changed. A lorry we had passed earlier was now at the front of the jam. A different horse lay dead in the ditch. "Check your watches," Morel said. We did. Mine had stopped at 10:53 and would never move again. But the sky above us was no longer stuck at late afternoon. The sun sat where it should for nearly 11 in the morning. The shadow of the hedge fell correctly. "The clocks in there don't care what the sun does," Marcel muttered. "They have their own." "Form up," Duval said hoarsely. "We go back to the trucks. We report. Saint, that village is empty, structurally sound, but not suitable for occupation." Morel's mouth twisted. "You can write that," he said. "The colonel will do what he wants. But if they send men to live there, they'll be on the list before their first supper." We walked back to the road. The noise of engines and shouted orders swallowed the subtle sounds that had followed us in the village. Still, under all that, I could hear faint ticks, like seeds cracking in heat. When we climbed into our truck again, the driver glanced at us. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said, trying for a joke. "Several," Marcel said. He lit a cigarette with shaking hands. "They were less ugly than you." The driver laughed, but it died quickly when he saw our faces. He turned the key. The engine caught. He checked his dashboard clock. "Huh," he said. "Battery must be loose. It's at 17:17. He reached to adjust it. "Leave it," I said too sharply. He looked at me, brow furrowed, but did as I asked. The war did not stop for one haunted village. The Germans kept coming. We fell back, fought, retreated again. Sometimes in the night we heard that thick, underwater bell ring in our dreams, and we woke with our hands on our rifles. Men died in ditches, under tanks, in farmyards. None of them died in that village, not on our watch, because we never went back. Others did. Weeks later, while we sat in a grove of trees, sharing a bottle of something that pretended to be wine, a group of artillerymen joined us. They had been sent to set up guns in a convenient village square that was supposedly empty and ready. They talked about it easily at first. Then they noticed we were listening harder than their jokes deserved. "Strangest thing," one of them said. "We put our guns in place, nice wide square, good field of fire." The commander was thrilled. Then, just as we settled in, all our watches froze, every one, even the chronometers on the guns. Then some idiot pulled the church bell rope to test the alarm. It rang 3 times, and half the men threw up. The colonel said we were spooked, ordered us to stay. By evening, he couldn't find his own tent. The place twisted on us, like a snail shell. "What time did your watches stop?" I asked. He frowned. 17:17, he said. "Why?" I didn't answer. There was nothing to say. They had escaped, obviously, because they were here. They had done what we had done, stumbling out by refusing to look. The next day, they received new orders to fall back farther. The guns never fired from that square. The war ended for us in different places. Some in prison camps, some under white crosses. Some, like me, with papers that said demobilized and a ticket on a crowded train. I went back to Lyon, married the girl who had written letters in careful blue ink, took a job counting stock in a warehouse. I moved boxers, numbers, never clocks. I avoided shop windows with grand old timepieces in them. The village became a knot in my mind I refused to pull. When my children asked where I had been in the war, I told them names like Sedan and Dunkirk, places with a beginning and an end. I did not tell them about the second that never finished. Still, it followed. The first time after the war was in 1957. I remember because my son had just been born. We were in the maternity ward, a bright room with too many people and too little air. The wall clock ticked loud enough to cut through the chatter. Nurses moved briskly from bed to bed. A radio played quietly in the corridor. Someone said, "What time is it?" My shift was supposed to end at the radio fizzed. The light in the overhead fixture dimmed, then steadied. The wall clock's second hand shuddered, stuttered, and stopped. 17:17. I stood up so fast, my chair scraped. My wife looked at me, surprised. The nurse nearest us frowned at the clock, then at her wristwatch. "That's odd," she said. Mine stopped too. Another nurse checked hers. Same. A visitor shook his head, tapping the face of a small travel clock he had brought. Dead. For a moment the room slowed, the voices stretched. My son's cry reached me as if down a long corridor. I smelled dust and stone, and the faint sour of stale coffee from a cafe in a village with no name. Then someone down the hall called for a doctor about a woman in labor, and the sound snapped something. The radio crackled back to life. The fluorescent tubes flickered and brightened. One of the nurses smacked the wall clock hard. It jumped. The second hand leaped forward, stumbled, then resumed ticking. Everything rushed back into normal speed. "Old wiring," someone muttered. "This building is falling apart." No one else thought to connect it to a village miles away and years ago. Why would they? I did not hold my son until later. When I finally took him in my arms, he blinked up at me, small hand opening and closing on nothing. I glanced at the clock. It read 17:20. Safe, I told myself, as if that mattered. Now, in this apartment, alone with my cheap wall clocks and the expensive one on the mantle that stopped working after my wife died, I watched the microwave's black digits. They remained stuck. 1717. The ticking in the walls comes and goes, like a swarm moving through pipes. Sometimes it's behind the kitchen, sometimes in the ceiling above the bedroom, sometimes in the floor under my chair. It never settles. I pick up the travel watch again. My thumb triggers the old reflex, winding a spring that is broken. The hands do not move. The small dent on the back sits under my fingertip, the shape of Marcel's ring in miniature. I see him as he was that day, stumbling in the village, laughter scraped raw. Later, in a ditch outside a different place, his ring broken on his hand, watch gone, body half buried by a near miss. He did not die in the frozen second. The war took him the ordinary way. The village had claimed enough of him. Lefebvre, Borden, the artillery colonel, whose name I never knew, the woman in the cafe, the man in the old uniform with his hands tied behind his back. They are all somewhere in that second, pinned like insects. Sometimes I think I hear the bell from the church, but softer, like through layers of cloth. 3 muffled booms. The sound rattles the glassware. There it is now. 1. The shelf trembles. A spoon vibrates in a cup, sending tiny ripples across the cold tea. The lamp in the corner hums and dims. 2. The hallway outside my door fills with the muffled thud of neighbors' footsteps, stopping mid-stride. A child's laugh cuts off. A television drone freezes on a single note somewhere downstairs. The building inhales and does not exhale. 3. The air thickens. My limbs feel heavier. The digital clock on the stove flashes and then goes dark. The little mantel clock, which has not ticked in 2 years, jerks its pendulum once, a tired swing, then stills at a new angle. I stand, my knees ache. On the wall opposite me, the cheap round clock my daughter hung stops. Its hands lie at 1717. The plastic casing creaks as if under pressure. From the corner of my eye, in the reflection on the glass of the balcony door, I see the outline of a church tower that should not be there. Not the one down the street with its modern brick, but the square old stone of the village. The sky behind it is the wrong color, too flat, too fixed. The hands on its face are in the same place. 1717. Someone knocks on my door. The sound is soft, 3 taps with just the knuckles. Old-fashioned. I know that knock. I heard it on a farmhouse door in 1940 when we asked for water. On a church door, on the door of a cafe. I do not move. The knocking comes again, the same rhythm. My throat feels tight. The ticking rises to a roar and then drops away, leaving empty silence big enough to fall into. "Jean," a voice says from the other side. French, country accent. Female, young. I close my eyes. "Leave," she says. "Before you stay." My hand goes to the latch on instinct. The old muscles remember. I can feel the metal under my palm even without looking. If I open it, what will be on the other side? The hallway with its cracked linoleum and smell of boiled cabbage, or a cobbled street with a cafe sign creaking on rusty hinges. I think of the old man at the fence, counting us as we went by, his lips pressed thin. I think of the way his eyes lingered on me, as if he knew I would carry this longer than most. I take my hand away from the latch. Instead, I walk to the wall and take the cheap clock down. The second hand has stopped mid-step. I hold it for a moment, then drop it into the trash bin. It lands with a hollow, unsatisfying sound. On the mantel, the old clock from my father-in-law remains, frozen. Beside it, the travel watch lies where I left it, hands forever at 10:53. I pick it up again, press it into my palm until the edges bite. In the reflection of the glass, I see my face and, layered over it, for a second, men in horizon blue standing in a village square, next to Germans who are older than any man alive. The knocking at the door stops. In the quiet, the building sighs back into itself. The microwave beeps without being told, its digits flickering back to life. 1718. The lamp brightens. Downstairs, someone's television jumps mid-sentence into an advertisement. A baby cries. My knees tremble. I sit down heavily in the armchair facing the clock in the balcony. My heart thuds, slow and stubborn. The travel watch rests in my palm like a small animal that has forgotten how to breathe. I know this is not over. The village does not give up what it has taken. Time, there is a loop, not a line. Every so often it reaches out along that loop for anyone who carries its second in their bones. Maybe next time, I won't pull my hand away from the latch. Maybe next time, when the bell rings and the clocks stop, I'll stand up slower, let the sound swell until the walls thin, and step through. Walk across cobbles that are both then and now. Join the others who never got out of that square. For now, I sit and watch the hands that no longer move. If you want to hear more stories like this, the kind that don't end when the telling does, stay a little longer next time. Listen for the seconds that go missing. Remember the men of 3E Company, 18E Regiment, d'Infanterie, lost near that nameless village south of Sedan in 1940, and all the seconds that never reached 1718.